Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to do a part 1 of 2 videos, and I'm going to restore 3 Millennium Falcons. Now, I'm not going to complete them all. I'm just going to take the 3 and get the best parts from each vehicle. Here's another one here. Both of these were pickups from flea market. One was from a flea market, one was from a local seller from a classifieds. And the third one was from a flea market haul 2 months ago. I'll put that link in the description down below. It's the G.I. Joe Star Wars flea market haul. So you can check that out if you want to see where the third one came from. So these are pretty dirty. Like I said, some of them, they're in pretty good shape. I mean, one of them is more yellow than the other two. One of them has the cover is broken, so I'll glue that together, but I'm probably going to keep all the best parts from all 3. And I'm also checking to see if the electronics works, and I also want to check to see if there's any variance in the 3 that I have. So sorry about the dark video, but I was doing this in my basement and my lighting isn't down there. But I'm trying to get these stickers off, and these are ridiculously hard to get off. I'm using lighter fluid to try to get the glue to let go, but it's not really working, and I used a lot. So what's happening is the stickers are becoming really thin after I take them off. So I'm going to try to save as many of the original stickers as possible, but I'm also going to make some new ones. So now we've got to get that sticker residue off, and this took me forever to get this sticker residue off. I'm using, again, naphtha, and I'm just going to do my best to get this off as much as possible. So the history of vintage Star Wars vehicles and figures for me is, I remember getting the first 4 figures when they came out in 78, 77, 78. I was only 5 years old, and I remember getting Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, I had R2-D2, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I actually vividly remember all of those figures, having them and playing with them. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take the best cardboard. One of these is damaged. One of them is really kind of stained. I think I'm going to take that one there. Let me see. Yeah, that's the one I'm going to take. Next, we're going to clean these motors because none of them work right now, and I'm going to use this release all. Just a little tiny bit. You don't want to use too much, but you just want to get it in there, lubricate the motor inside so that when we apply power to it, they go. And we have to kind of force the movement a little bit. So I guess what I'm trying to say when it comes to my childhood is that those were the first figures I got. I remember getting an X-Wing, but my memory of the X-Wing is that it had 2 broken wings. I couldn't play with it anymore. It really annoyed me. I tried my best to make it look like my friend's whose wasn't broken. And I didn't play with it much because you couldn't make the wings go open and close because the top 2 wings were broken. But I do remember the Millennium Falcon. I played with that constantly. It was a perfect... This is the problem with toys that are being produced today, is there's no play value to them. My kids, when they go to the store, they don't want to go into the toy section most of the time because there's really nothing for them to get excited about. And if there is something that they want, it's like $200 to $400. So the thing about this Millennium Falcon, they were mass produced, they were cheap to buy, but also they were fantastic toys. And I mean, anybody from the 80s, if anybody's watching this, you're from the 80s, you know. And the next thing my mother bought me was the Palatoy Death Star. It's made out of cardboard. It's like the holy grail of things that I would like to own someday. And yeah, I had that and played it until it was made out of cardboard, so I played it until it fell apart. I'm pretty sure it went into the garbage. So, and then after that, G.I. Joe came out, and that was it. So that's my history of my Star Wars playing until I got into my 30s and started collecting again. So what we're trying to do is get these motors running, and you really have to kind of get that lubricant in there and get it moved around inside and kind of force the motors to turn. And once it gets started, you can't hear it because I don't have the sound, but it's really squeaky, and you can hear the squeak eventually go away as it turns because the lubricant has moved through the internals of the motor and makes it actually silent again. It won't be silent once we put it back in because, of course, it will make that ungodly vintage Star Wars sound, plastic against a cog. Pretty much all of these motors I managed to get working again. I just chose the one that had the cleanest contacts because one of them I think was really, really rusted. And we'll clean those off, and then let's put this thing back together. Now that we've got the electronics working, we've got the toy completely cleaned. I cleaned it in soap and water. I just used like Dawn dish detergent. We've cleaned it. We've got the stickers off, and now we're going to spend some time putting the motor back on and getting all the parts back in. So when you're putting this back together, you have to make sure you have the right screws. Most of the screws are exactly the same size, but sometimes Kenner use different size screws. And then to keep the motor in, we've got to put this bracket over the top of it and then screw it in. That keeps everything secured in place. And you'll notice that the contacts go up and over the area where the batteries go in. I want to make sure that I test it every time, because I don't want to get it all back together and spend all this time doing it and then it doesn't work. So I want to keep testing the motor constantly so it doesn't seize up again, and make sure that the contacts are working, the motor is working. And I'm doing this with all three. I'm not going to show all three because that would make this video really, really long. But I've done this exact same process with all three. One of the Millennium Falcons, I think it was the last one that I put together, it was in the worst condition. It had a little bit of warping where the pilot sits near the cockpit. And so that was a little bit more difficult to get back together. I kind of had to force it without trying to break it. Okay, so let's put in the front landing gear. This front landing gear, if you're not familiar with the Millennium Falcon toy, it folds up inside. So we've got to get it in there, and there's some friction areas on the handle. There's also a bracket that's similar to the bracket that we used for the motor, and that goes over those two pieces and screws back in. And that handle, that you can pivot that handle out to stand it up, because it almost acts as like a stand, but it also acts as landing gear, but also a handle. We're just going to screw this bracket in place, and we'll be ready to move on to the next part. So the X-Wing fighter that I did have, that I was talking about with the broken wings, that was the X-Wing. It was the first X-Wing fighter. I remember it being, well, I remember it, when I remember it, it was yellow. So it was the white version, and it did not have the battle damage stickers, or if it did, I didn't put them on. So, but I remember my friend, he had the X-Wing fighter. He must have had the gray one, because I think the gray one came with the battle damage stickers, and he had the battle damage stickers. And I know a lot of people didn't like the stickers, but I wanted them, and I tried to get him to give me one of the stickers off of it so I could put it on mine, and he never would. All right, so the next thing we have to do is put in all these panels, and they just kind of slot in on each end of the panel. They slot in with little kind of like pins or pegs, and they slot in, and these get kind of warped. All of that has to stay in place, including the cardboard, while you put the top on. But I managed to get all those panels in there. I did have the land speeder too, actually. I remember playing with the land speeder. Luke Skywalker's land speeder. I did a restoration of that, and I recorded it, but I haven't released it yet. I'll probably release that probably in the next month or so, but because I haven't finished the voiceover yet. But that toy, I think every child had broken that toy. And if you've owned it, you know exactly the part that I'm talking about. So you know, that was a fun toy, and I liked how the landing gear went up and it had wheels and everything, but that one didn't last very long. I found that the plastic was really brittle on those land speeders. All right, seems like all the panels are in. Now we just have to work on trying to get it seems like everything is in place. It seems secure. Put our cardboard in. Now this is a tricky part. You don't want to put the cardboard in because this is a really, really nice example of the cardboard backdrop. It's not wrinkled, it's not creased, it's not it's clean. I cleaned it actually with a damp cloth to get any dust off of it. It's just a really good example, and I want to keep it that way. So putting this top on is probably the most difficult part of this restoration, if you want to call it. I wouldn't really call it a restoration today because there's some things that I could still do to it that could make it more like when it came out of the factory. But I guess I'll call it a restoration for the sake of cleaning it and putting stickers on it and stuff. But I really couldn't get this top on. It was really giving me a hard time, and so I still have the batteries in the battery compartment, and I decided to take the batteries out. I feel like having the batteries out of the ship made it easier to get the top back on. And there's something was keeping it from slotting in, probably those side panels, because they all have to fit in the right spots. And you have to make sure that the cardboard doesn't get wrinkled when you put the top on. It took me a long time. I was probably like 20 minutes getting the top on and just being really careful not to damage that cardboard insert. I have some new lighting and a new camera. The camera that I'm using right now is a Nikon camera, but I find that the zoom on it is so loud. Before I put the screws back in. Fantastic. So this is a long video, I know, but there's a lot to this. I mean, there's a lot of video that I've cut out just because, it took a long time. Probably took a couple days to do this. So let's get all these screws back in. Okay, so that's all the screws, I believe. I'm just checking to make sure I've got them all in. And that's pretty much it. So that concludes part 1 of our vintage Star Wars Millennium Falcon restoration. In the next video, we'll get the stickers printed off and use the stickers that I don't have from the original one, because I will be using the original stickers, even though they don't look great. They're not perfect, but I would like to keep this as original as possible. So that's what I'm trying to do. For me, having it kind of battered and played with and looking like it's been around for a bit is important. All right, so please like, subscribe, comment down below, and we'll see you in part 2.